Hey everybody, it's Mike Sanders from Junto Tribe, and I've got sitting right across the table here from me.
This is Jim Marion coming to you live.
We are live and ready to go, and we are so excited to be back here, coming off of a couple busy weeks of work, and then also with the ministry, and it's just been really great. And today we're going to start back conversing about the 7 archetypes that we have in the book.
Yes, sir.
And today we're going to be talking about being one of my favorite ones. Actually, I love this chapter
That makes one of us.
Yeah, because I enjoy learning, and it's the Scholar podcast.
Awesome.
So we're going to be talking about being what it means to be a scholar today.
So, Mike, it's been a while.
Yeah,
pretty excited.
Me
I've
too.
missed you.
I
I've missed you on Tribe Talk.
Yep,
So, guys, welcome to Tribe Talk. We're back.
it's going to be awesome.
I know. All right. So we're talking about Scholar chapter this week.
Yep.
So, buddy, I love how you started this one. If you've not read the book yet, the book that Mike wrote, he starts every chapter with a verse in the Bible and then a quote from somebody that he admires. And he uses Proverbs 4:5-7, which says, "Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget my words or swerve from them. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme. Therefore, get wisdom. Though it cost you all you have, get understanding." Well, it's pretty directive, man.
I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm genuinely a curious guy. Probably not to the level that you are. But why do you think God put that in us?
Yeah, I think curiosity is part of the creation of who we are, and curiosity being that we're trying to learn as much as we possibly can about life. And I think if you look at young kids, and especially if they're not directed to certain, hey, learn this or whatever, and some kids are fine being directed on what to learn, but most kids are constantly wanting to learn about the environment around them. So there's something inside of us. So like, for example, if you look at a baby's eyes, a baby is constantly looking around, trying to understand and figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of wanting to understand the world around us is in us at a very young age. And what I love about what Proverbs says is it says, "Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you."
Mm.
So this idea of wisdom, knowledge is great. Wisdom is something more. And we'll probably get that here in a little bit, but there's wisdom is something that can actually protect us. And I think God has the answers to that, and we'll probably get into that here a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love that the scripture uses the word "she." Just more proof that you ladies are more wise than we lunkheads. So
that's right.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and it happened from the very beginning, right? So God was walking in the garden with Adam, and I was thinking about this not too long ago, Mike. When God created Adam, he could have created Adam with all that wisdom already in his brain. Yeah. But he didn't. Right. So he made Adam to learn in the garden. Why do you think he did that?
I think originally the idea was again, we have this curiosity, right? And so it seems to me that, I can give you things. I can make you the greatest athlete ever. I can give you money. I can give you all of that. But but if you're given something, you don't understand how important it is, because working for something is what allows you to have certain just about everything in life. Right. And so like this idea of us having the ability to get wisdom is part of the process for us finding the reality of who we are. And if it was just given to us, it wouldn't have the price tag on it. It wouldn't be as important. That's number one. Number two, there's this idea of free will, and free will means that
keeps coming up, man.
What's that?
That keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's
that
free
concept
will.
Of free will.
Yep. Yeah. So God gives us free will out of love. So he can force everything on you and say, no, you need to believe in me. You need to have this. You need to do these different things and fall in line. But then he's no longer a loving God. He's a tyrant.
Why? Because I said so.
Yeah, because I said so.
Oh, shoot. That's what I say to my kids.
Yeah. We'll get into it.
Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, probably. But that's
okay.
But this idea is that free will is part of the process, and it says in Proverbs, it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's to, or rather, let me say that again. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings."
Mm.
So if we think of God's creation as a kingdom, and then that we have been entered into that kingdom as human beings, and we are part of the kingdom, that means you call us princes or kings, and that's what we talk about in Junto, is that we have work to do while we're here, right? And so God conceals those matters, and it's our job as men and women to search out the glory of kings.
Nice.
Because the wisdom is his truths that are hidden, and we're looking for them.
So I got this little voice in my head right now. It's 2-year-old me. And it's the question.
Was this yesterday?
Yeah, it's just yesterday.
Okay.
Hey, I've graduated to 3-year-old behavior, but
that's right.
No, I just have this voice in my head. It's the simplest question on earth that every 2-year-old does to every parent. Why?
Yes.
Why did he do it that way?
Yes.
So I'm asking you, why did he do it that way?
That's the thing. We don't know all the truths of God. We don't. But the idea is that part of the reason why we exist is to search him out. Again, we search out the ways of God. And this idea then that we've been given this curiosity, I truly believe, goes back to we're trying to find our God in everything. And that goes to, again, one of my favorite passages now in the Bible is when Jesus says, "I am the truth, the way, and the life." He says, "I am the truth." That means that he has the truths.
Yes.
There is such a thing as objective truth, and I didn't write it, and neither did you.
Yes.
He did. And so we're searching for that, for those truths. And if we do that, we find heaven on earth.
Absolutely. Well, and the other reality too is, like, think back to when God sat Adam down in the garden.
Yeah.
And he paraded every animal in creation by him.
Yep.
And said, "What should we call this?" And
Yep.
Adam got to name all the animals.
Yep.
He could have paraded all those animals by him and said, "This is a horse. This
Yep.
is an elephant. This is a gazelle, name it." But he didn't. He allowed Adam to participate.
Yeah.
Right? Why would he do something like that? Because he wants connection. He wants relationship. And the neat thing about including Adam in that process was he got buy-in.
Yes.
Think about how much more you internalize wisdom, remember it, and can apply it.
Yes.
When you had to work for it to get it.
Yeah. And that goes back to, I can give my kids everything, or a better way is to give them things after they work for those things. Right. And so because it means more to them, and there's just so many more things that come with that
they certainly appreciate it more.
Yeah. Beneficial to us as human beings.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the blessing that comes when you don't expect it is so much greater when you do.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I got to tell a quick story because you just sparked my memory when at our last infill, which is 3 weeks ago now, whenever this thing gets published or released to the world for everybody here. When we had infill, I had this moment where we were doing the spear process at night, and we had the guys break up in groups. We gave them really hard
soap. We use soap.
Soap.
Yep.
We had them think about really difficult things in the Bible, and they got together and talked about it. What does that mean? To kind of help them work on studying the Bible and taking the time to do that. Anyway, I walked up behind Ken Nielsen, also known as Captain America of Junto Tribe.
Not known as, it's what he is.
That's what he is. Sorry, my bad. And I just had this moment. I was looking, and he had all these high school boys around him, and it was so moving to me to see how he was just being quiet, just sitting there quietly, and he was asking the boys questions. And if you remember, that was actually one of the more deep thoughts that actually came out for the rest of the group that we shared from those high school boys. And so it kind of reminds me of the way God is with us.
Mm-hmm.
He says, look, here it is. Here's the information, but I need you to kind of try to figure this out on your own.
Yep.
Why? Because I gave you intelligence.
Right.
I gave you the ability to be able to do these things. And so anyway.
So the other thing I noticed from that interaction was the smile on Ken's face.
Yeah.
And so picture God
Yeah.
in Eden with his son going, look what I created.
Yes.
Isn't this cool?
It's so cool.
With a huge smile on his face when he was able to, not that he was able, when he allowed his son to name it.
Yeah.
Right?
Love
now, it's such a connection between a father and a son.
Yep.
And that's what he wants for us. Ultimately, that's it.
So that gets to really the depth of this idea that we're kind of getting at is that knowledge and wisdom are ultimately relational.
Nice.
Knowledge and wisdom, especially wisdom, are ultimately relational. There's something about it that if we keep it relational, we keep it on finding God's truths, it keeps us on the straight and narrow. And by the way, the straight and narrow is actually where we find heaven on earth.
Mm.
So this idea of doing the things that God has for us, anyway, that's a whole nother conversation right there. But it really is. It's relational.
Well, then, I mean, you brought it up, those two words, knowledge and wisdom. They get thrown out kind of interchangeably sometimes. What's the difference?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, the way I look at this is knowledge is I mean, we can have knowledge of anything. And I can go out and try to find, even on good things, I can go out and try to find the answers to questions that I have, and that's giving me knowledge. But wisdom is knowing how to apply it in the world, in my opinion. That's what I think.
Yep.
So being able to apply it, and Charles Spurgeon has a great quote. He says, "Wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is not to be wise. Many men know a great deal and are all the greater fools for it. There is no fool so great a fool as a knowing fool. But to know how to use knowledge is to have wisdom." So this idea of wisdom means I know how I can use this in the world. And again, this goes back to this idea that if we're going to, because we talk about it all the time, know who you are, understand your purpose, and the more, and if I understand what God wants to do on the planet, then I can take the things that I know. I'm an engineer, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a plumber, I'm a whatever, but you can still do the work of the kingdom because you're using your knowledge to turn it into wisdom, which is to help other people.
Yes.
And that goes back to being a servant, which we also talk about in the book.
Well, and I think a lot of times people, they paint missions work into one thing.
Yes.
And one task. And that's just not true. God gave you that skill. He expects you to use it. To
all the time.
Heaven and earth. All the time.
All the time.
Exactly right.
So missions, there's nothing wrong with missions. We're not saying that, but what we're saying is,
in the technical term.
Yeah, in the technical term, it's like everything is a mission. Mm-hmm. Everything. Mm-hmm. And so this is the we were just talking about this morning in our board meeting. It's time for men and women to stand up and start doing something for the kingdom.
Right.
And your whole life should be dedicated. Everything that you do should be given to him, because what that ends up doing is that brings heaven's principles to the planet, and it changes the world.
Yes.
Which is what the disciples did.
Well, I think we get talked out of doing that, though. We get told that we have to volunteer in church or we have to go on missions trips, and that's the only way to serve, and that's just not reality.
Nope.
I can use the skills God gave me to usher heaven to earth.
All the time.
In every environment.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly right. That is so good. That is so good.
And it doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes. I mean, there's a good chance that we're going to stray. We're going to use our knowledge in the wrong direction, and we're going to do things that's not bringing heaven's principles to earth. Yes. But that's the thing. It's okay.
So I'm chuckling because I don't know whose quote this is. I didn't come up with this idea, but I once heard wisdom and knowledge compared. That knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. So yes. Yeah. I thought that was hilarious. But the application is like like you're talking about, sometimes we have knowledge and we do use it inappropriately. We throw it in a fruit salad every now and then.
Yep.
And so I don't know. What's the metaphor? We got to pick out the tomatoes and start over?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm getting hungry now.
Oh, you're welcome. So let me ask you this. So you talked about truth earlier. I think something that society is struggling with now is we've been talked into believing that there is no objective truth and that my truth is truth.
Love this question.
So you know where I'm going.
Yep.
So what's the folly in that? How did that come about, and how do we defeat that?
Yeah, I got into a pretty good conversation with one of our actually not high school, younger guys at Infill about this concept. And the thing is that truths are, in my opinion, and I think there's enough evidence to prove that they are something that we can choose, which is to say that they are outside of us. They are something that I can choose. And I can also choose lies. So lies are out there somewhere too. And so this idea then goes back to truths being something that I can choose. Man, I'm sorry. Here I go again. What was the question you said?
So what's the folly in believing that there's not objective truth?
Okay. So objective truth then, if I come to you as somebody and say that does not believe in objective truth, and I come to you and say there's no such thing as objective truth. Mm-hmm. And the question that you should ask me is that a truth statement?
Yeah. There you go, using logic on me.
Right. But so in other words, this idea of truth, it seems to be something that's outside of us. Mm-hmm. And that means that if there's truth, there has to be the opposite, which is lies. Mm-hmm. So I can sit and change the truths, or I can make up my own truth or whatever it is, because I'm allowed to do that because of free will. Mm-hmm. But if I do that and I constantly do that and I'm not tied to my creator, what I end up doing is I come up with either narcissistic values or hedonistic values, which I believe, or nihilistic values. That all of that stuff is related to me making up the world as I want it to make up. Yeah. And I just don't think that we can get to a place in life where I think that, wow, what Jim wants, Jim can have. Mm-hmm. But what if I want what Jim has, and I'm going to take it? Right. Now we're starting to get to this point where objective truth is getting muddied, and now it's just about whatever it is that I want. And
well, if there's no right and wrong, that's anarchy. You can just do what you want.
Exactly.
And look, we're not going to tackle the most controversial, my truth is my truth topic, but I'll use this example instead. I hear all the time, I do believe in God, but I just believe He wants me to be happy. Mm-hmm. And that gives you your consistent get out of jail free card. Yep. Where you don't need to even align your heart with God. You can just chase your own desires.
That's it. They're
basically saying, I just want to chase the flesh, and I'll deal with the consequences that when I have to account for my actions.
Right.
And I think what happens too often is, even we as Christians, we almost encourage people to do that because we're too scared mm-hmm. to speak truth.
That's it.
And the reality is, you're not doing people favors by lying to them.
That's right.
Now, there's a way to do it tactfully. I'm not saying you got to hit people over the head with the Bible, because your methods do matter in making disciples. But for us to just go, yep, I guess you're right, and live and let live, that's not something that we're called to do.
No.
So
and sometimes that's not easy.
No, it's really, really hard.
It's really, really hard.
Absolutely. Especially when you're dealing with family.
Yeah.
Think about the divisions over faith within families.
Yep.
It's really hard to look at a parent or a child or a brother and sister and go, I'm sorry, you're just wrong.
Yep.
And Frank, we shouldn't even say sorry. We should be able to kindly just say, that's just not true. But we feel scared.
Yeah. So I love these two examples. When Jesus went to speak truth into people's lives, two examples that come to my mind. One of them when he saw the woman at the well. Mm-hmm. He was so loving and compassionate, and loving and compassion is sounded loving and compassionate,
Yep.
which he was.
And she felt it.
And she felt it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to her, hey, walk away from that life you're living. You don't need to live that life, right? So what she thinks is the only way that she can find belonging in the world, he's basically saying, hey, you need to stop, and you know it.
Right.
Right. And so love and compassion is coming out of him like crazy. But love and compassion also came when he said to the Pharisees or Sadducees, one of the two, I'm sorry if I'm getting that mixed up, but he said to them, you whitewashed tombs.
Mm-hmm.
He flat out attacked them, but was there compassion and love in his heart? I would argue absolutely. That doesn't mean he wasn't mad.
Yep.
And he should have been mad because
he had the right to be mad.
That's right. He had the right to be mad because what they were doing is they were forcing rules and law and religion on people, and it was making them miss the goodness of life. And so again, these people were walking around believing that they were totally committed to God, and Jesus comes along and he attacks and says, calls them names. That does not mean that there was not love and compassion in his heart.
And I don't know how we got on this line of discussion, but it's solid gold. The reality is the attack is what needs to set us apart.
Yeah.
In my experience, I think right now Christians are being persecuted in a way that we're getting attacked for our beliefs.
Agreed.
And the word tolerance is thrown out, and people do have a lot of tolerance for everybody but us.
Yep.
And the difference is, like, when I get in these arguments with people, I feel attacked, and I try not to levy that back on that person because I do have compassion for them.
Yep.
But the reality is, if they're right and I'm wrong, then I lose nothing.
Yep.
If I'm right and they're wrong, which I believe I am, they lose everything.
Yep.
And that should motivate you.
To
speak truth.
To stand up and talk.
Exactly right.
To say something.
And to be bold.
Absolutely agree.
With the kind of gentleness that Jesus showed the woman at the well.
Yes.
There's the perfect example.
But there are times, and I know this isn't popular in Christian circles, there are times when you just need to have your bell rung. And I need to,
sure.
Jesus did it, and that is not right. That is wrong, incorrect. Move on.
Right.
Right. And
that's where I think you do have to vary the tactic.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. And I think all the tools need to be in there. If you just stick to one or the other, it's got to meet the individual, the person that you're talking to.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest, speaking of lies, that I think that our enemy has used against us is to all make us believe that, they'll understand I'm a Christian by the way I act. Or they'll, I don't want to like be mean or anything like that or say the wrong thing because then I'm not a Christian anymore. Mm-hmm. But that's not the way Jesus lived his life.
Or how about you don't know enough to speak up?
Yes, exactly.
Speaking about wisdom.
Yeah, speaking of wisdom.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is, like I tell some of our younger guys that we meet with, like everybody has a worldview. Mm-hmm. And I don't care who you are. You could be an atheist, you can be a Muslim, you can be a this, you can be that, you can whatever it is, but you have a worldview. Mm-hmm. Why is it that Christians are scared to share their worldview?
Because they're scared that they're going to run into somebody smarter than them. That's going to trip them up.
Yep.
And here's the cool thing about this, and I want to encourage guys to speak up. One of the most viable tactics in being and sounding credible is when somebody stumps you, you look back at them and go, I don't know.
That's right.
Those 3 words are so powerful. Those are 3 words, yep. Okay, yeah, seeking wisdom. I don't know lends credibility to your statements. It's probably wise to follow that up with, but I'll find out and get back to you.
Yes.
And think about what kind of a door that opens up. So when you say that, first of all, you're admitting that you don't have all the answers and that there is some shades of gray in there that we need to discover together. It also states to that person, I'm willing to walk with you in order to discover this together. And it creates an opportunity for a second discussion.
Yes.
Now you have a reason to go back. So think about that tactic. Next time you hear the devil telling you, don't do it, you don't know enough. You can always use that little tactic in order to
totally agree.
To lend credibility to your position.
When I was in grad school, I had a night class, which I hate night classes because we know I can't stay up past 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Mike loves the early bird
I
special.
like early bird. I like being up early. And I had a night class, and in that night class, I was learning strength conditioning because that's what I originally started out as doing. And my professor made a comment about something that I felt was not correct.
Mm.
It was believed by a lot of people, but I just didn't think it was correct. And so I raised my hand and said, I hate to tell you, but I think you're incorrect, and here's why. And I remember that as I sat there in that class that night, the rest of the students hated me.
Mm.
Like, will you just shut up and can we move on? But you know me, I was like, I can't let it rest. I really do think I'm right. So I kept.
You?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Me, I know.
Hard time letting things go?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's weird. But so anyway, what he did to me that night was pure genius. He said, okay, here's the thing. We could be here all night. So what I want you to do is I want you to, all these journal articles and everything that you are telling me exist, I want you to bring them to me, and we're going to have a conversation.
Nice.
And I was young enough. I'm like, spot on, man. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing my graduate work in the same building. So I would just call him up. Hey, what are you doing right now? Nothing. Come on up. So I'd come up and I'd bring these articles to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I became an expert in this area because I just kept saying, basically proving him that I was correct. After I got married, which is 20 some years ago now, I get a thing in the mail from him. It's a card. It says, hey, congratulations on the marriage, all this kind of stuff. Sorry I couldn't be there. And he said, oh, and by the way, just so you know, I'm teaching my class differently now.
Wow.
So, but that was such a big moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what God does. Like, think about my instructor, my professor being sort of like the God figure. What he was doing is like, are you sure that's true?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you prove it to me? Let me see what you think. And then I start digging into the real truths and I bring those to him. And to this day, I can argue those points. And that's over 20 years ago.
Yeah. How pumped up were you to go through that process?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it started a relationship with him that was so powerful. And yeah. I miss him. I miss him terribly. I haven't been around him for years, but just, it was an amazing experience.
That's so cool.
And that's what God does.
I love the motivation behind it too. Like he pushed a button in you that you probably didn't even know was there.
No.
And it probably launched you down a pathway for the rest of your life.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way. That's very true.
By disagreeing with you.
Yep.
So maybe the lesson there is don't be afraid to have the argument.
Yes. Yes. You think, and this goes back to the worldview piece. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got one. Mm-hmm. Well, who's right? Is there objective truth or not? Right? Who is right? So let's have conversation. Let's open up and have conversation about these things.
Yep. Well, and I think the art to that. So like I'm talking to my college kids now, right? I think we feel so paralyzed to have these arguments in the classroom environment. I think one of the tools that you can use is figuring out a way to gracefully disagree.
Yep.
And then making it clear that at the end of the conversation, we're still going to love each other.
Yep.
Setting some rules and guidelines about how we're going to argue, and then have at it.
Yeah. But the key, I think, on all of these things that we've been talking about, and because we talk about Solomon in the book, mm-hmm. is that you still have to remember never to lose sight of your creator.
All right. So I don't think everybody knows about that. So why don't you explain that concept?
Right. So the idea is that, again, if we think that there is objective truth that's outside of me, then who wrote it? That means, in my opinion, based off of studying and learning and all these different things, and the more I learn, the more it's pointing to who I believe wrote it, which is the creator of everything that we see around us. And that then leads to Jesus being the creator of all that we have. And so what Solomon did was that when he didn't know Jesus, he understood God. And when he was getting ready to take leadership, he prayed at a very young age, and he said to God, I want to have a discerning heart. I want wisdom so that I can lead my people well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he did lead them well for a long time. And people from all over the world came to Solomon to find out, like, when they had these difficult issues, I'll go to Solomon and he will help.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of really good stories in there that Solomon did.
Well, he's universally recognized as being a wise man.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So then God gives him this. Solomon could ask for anything. He could have said, just give me the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Just give me the greatest kingdom of all time and let me just hang out and eat, drink, and be merry.
I don't want to do any work.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And God rewarded that by allowing him to have a time of peace and gave him wisdom. But where Solomon ended up going wrong is he ended up moving away from God's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, I don't know, it was a lot of wives. And what he was doing is he was listening to his wives, and his wives were pulling him away from that objective truth, which was written by God, which means he was pulling away from God.
Right.
And then at some point in his life, we end up seeing that that the kingdom then, Judah and Israel, then split, right? And it never came back together.
Mm-hmm.
So again, what happened there? It was because he lost true wisdom. He lost the writer of the truth,
right?
And that's the issue.
Well, and men, I want you to resist the urge to blame all your problems on women in that story. But the part of that too is he surrounded himself with people that were actively trying to turn his eye away from God.
And that's happening all the time to all of us.
Correct. I would say that there is a very large earthly universal campaign to get us to seek wisdom elsewhere.
Gosh, dude, that's good. That's really good.
Right. So again, not just women, boys.
Yeah.
Resist the urge to make a joke. I just did it for you and you didn't even know. It's having a network of people that are going to continuously point you back to God.
Yes.
That's what we need. You know, it's so funny too. I was trying to find a way to share this, but I was walking on Turkey Creek. For those of you that don't live here in Niceville, it's a mile-long boardwalk in the bayou. There's a beautiful freshwater creek. It's a beautiful spot here in Niceville, Florida. And I was there early in the morning, and there was what appeared to be a family of a bunch of homeschool kids that were on the boardwalk with their parents. And there were 5 girls on the boardwalk that were wearing their soccer uniforms. And there was definitely not a soccer game at that time. And each kid had a different uniform. It was a different color. So clearly these kids that were, elementary school age called each other and said, and they're all females. And they said, girls, we're all wearing our soccer uniforms out to Turkey Creek today when we go. And the download I got from God from just witnessing that was how desperate we are as humans to be a part of something.
Yes.
To be a part of a tribe.
Yes.
All right. And hence the name Junto Tribe. That's why we created that. And it was so obvious to me in that moment how desperate we are to feel like we belong somewhere. So I think as you describe Solomon, the message is you have to desperately seek people who are going to turn you back to Christ.
Yes.
When you're seeking knowledge, you need to be around people who are going to aggressively turn you back to God's wisdom.
I love that.
So
it's good.
Pretty good story, huh?
Yeah. Well, and side note, how many people say their favorite football team, Alabama, we got beat yesterday? Mm-hmm. No, we didn't do anything. Yeah. You weren't part of the process.
Really, how many snaps did you play?
All you did was yell at the TV, buddy.
I noticed you're walking just fine today with no injuries.
That's right. Yeah. But you're right. And we do.
Not picking on our Alabama people, by the way. No. It's just the first thing that came to mind because they're so good.
Yeah. And Jeremy Smith loves Alabama.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
One of our friends.
Yeah, it's one of our friends. Yeah. But really, you're right. And we do need to surround ourselves with people that are at least we can't always surround ourselves. Okay, let me say that again. Surround ourselves with people that have the same outlook as us to keep us strong when we're weak and things like that. But we also can't run from the world.
Right.
And I read, man, it's been years ago. My church growing up I love churches, by the way. I do. I can go sit in the church and not do anything,
Like
just sit there.
the building.
Yeah, the
Talking about
building
space.
itself.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. And the church I grew up in had a lot of wood on the inside of it. You know, the old school church. I read one time that was actually uh, popular at one point, and still with me personally very popular. But it was popular at one point because it looked like an ark. But the thing was, we set ourselves up to escape.
It's a place of safety.
It was a place of safety, and that's not what we should do when we're following Christ. When we have wisdom, when we have His truths inside of us, we should not be trying to escape. We should be actually invading. We should be going into places and showing the rest of the world His truths, because that's how the world then gets changed for the better.
Well, I mean, you use the ark as your example. God didn't tell Noah to stay in it forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, for a time.
Yeah, for
you're
a time.
You're going to have to live on this thing.
And
then I got a big freaking job for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when He left, we can't get into that right now, but when He left, covenants were being made, which we are now living in right now. And that's a whole other story we can get into some other time.
Yes. Beautiful.
It's awesome.
So, yeah, but I mean, we often do fall short. So who did it right?
Well, this Jesus guy got it pretty right.
Yeah. Tell me about him.
Well, so what I love, and again, we talk about this a little bit, but Jesus, the Bible tells us that, I'll just read some of the things, but of all the people who followed Adam in the Old Testament, none came closer to fulfilling God's original design for man to be a scholarly ruler. Oh, excuse me. I'm completely messed up, which is normal for me, as you know.
Okay. Backtrack.
But Solomon had the Queen of Sheba, for example, that came to him for some wisdom. And 1,000 years later, Jesus shows up and he says, the Queen of the South, speaking of Sheba, the Queen of the South will rise as the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now one greater than Solomon is here. So Jesus is the most wise individual that has ever walked the planet. So I had a pastor say to me one time, I could not believe I heard it. He said, Jesus is not here to show us how to live. He's our Savior, and that's the end of it. But that's not true. Jesus is our Savior. He's our God. He's our Creator, but He's also our counselor. He gives us wisdom. He helps with so much more. And so this idea of authenticity, which we talk about all the time, He's the only authentic man that ever lived. And that means that we need to understand His truths and His ways, because that helps us become more authentic, more genuine, and more real.
Absolutely.
So Jesus never strayed, ever, from worshiping and recognizing the Father as the ultimate source of truth.
Awesome. Yes.
Yes.
And we talked about this earlier as we were prepping. Think about it. Think about what Jesus's answers were when He was challenged. He could have said, "Thus saith the me."
Yes.
Right? But He didn't.
That's good.
He
That's
said,
really good.
"Thus saith the Lord."
Yeah, that's good.
He always turned the truth back to the Father.
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Because why did Jesus have to come in human form and walk the earth and experience what it was like to be human?
That's so good.
So that He could be the perfect sacrifice for us.
Yep.
So He got to experience all the sarcastic joys of being a human on earth, but He did it perfectly.
Yep.
And He always pointed His wisdom back to the Father.
Yep.
And so what better example?
And this idea then is that His Spirit lives in me. That means that I can have access to those truths. So this idea, again, scholarly wisdom comes from understanding our God, and we can do that in everything that we do in life. And so what it comes down to is God made us God made us for Him, and our hearts are restless until they rest in You. And I can't remember where that came from, but that's a quote that basically says that we are restless in our pursuits, and that includes the scholarly pursuits, until we are resting in Him, because He is life.
And He gave us His authority.
and he gave us his authority, which is another thing. It's just mind blowing.
Right. I mean, what's the purpose of that?
To change the world.
Right. To usher heaven to earth.
Boom.
And the only way to do that effectively is to turn to the Father for wisdom.
That's it.
Beautiful.
I think we should stop because you did a great job.
Hey, great wrap up. All right. Well, so real quick before we do go, what are some practical ways to seek wisdom? What are your methods?
Well, I'm a psycho.
That's why I'm asking you. And then I'm going to tell you what mine are. So you get to go first.
Okay. My thing is I love to read, and to the point where, man, I wish I could do more of it. But life is calling. And so I don't always do as much as I would like, but I love to read. So I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is usually pray, and I bring concerns. I bring thanks. I bring just as much as I can think of to him, and ask for his guidance. And then I usually will read a little bit when I'm eating breakfast, and that gets me started. And I try to read the Bible at least every day if I have time, and I usually do. And that helps me get a better understanding of what life is all about, and that helps me create that wisdom and that knowledge.
Yeah. So from my perspective, like my spiritual disciplines are definitely getting better. I would say between you and me, your volume is a lot higher than mine. You devour books, and not just the Bible, but books in general.
It's the nerd in me.
Look, and I'm a nerd about certain things, so I'm not knocking that. And I like to read. I don't love to read like you do. There is a point to this, I promise. My strength is I get to have conversations with a guy like you. And you can explain higher level principles, and I have the ability to take those and turn them into something that is more digestible.
Absolutely.
For normal people. So why do I bring that up? Because we talked about fellowship before. And what I think we've found, not just between you and me, but with the whole group, is a team that wants to learn more, and we're able to take each other's strengths and use it to affect the kingdom. So I just want to make that plug one more time. You got to get connected. You got to do it. And it can't be with people that are just like you.
Right.
That's a great recipe for groupthink. And then when you start down the wrong path, there's nobody there to turn the ship in another direction, in the correct direction back to Christ. So make sure you get that. If you don't know how, send us a message.
Yeah.
We'll get you plugged in. But you just got to look for it, and you got to find it. Would you agree? I
would totally agree, because as you're explaining that, I was thinking to myself how much I've grown in the last few years hanging out with you guys, and that comes from, again, it's every one of us have certain strengths, and every one of us have weaknesses. And this reminds me really quickly, when I was working for the SEAL teams, there was a team of guys, and they had one really, really massive tall guy, and he was a big guy. And they had one guy that was also really, really short. And when they were deployed, the joke was, hey, we need somebody to come over here and do little guy stuff. Mikey, get over here and do this. And we need somebody to do big guy stuff. Hey, Brock, get over here and do this. So that's the idea that you're getting at, is that we all need each other. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses, and we become better over time. God puts men of wisdom in your life and just because you're not reading books all day does not mean you're not a wise individual. It's just you're different, and you learn differently, and that's what we need each other for.
Love it. Yeah. And I'll bet you those two guys embraced that skill too.
They did too.
The little guy probably didn't try and act like a big guy.
Nope.
And the big guy probably didn't try and act like the little guy. And that doesn't just apply to our physical traits. We can apply that to the way we learn. And our mental traits too.
It's good, man.
So awesome.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Good talk, Russ.
Good stuff. Let's go read some books.
Okay. Great.
So, all right. Well, hey, Mike, I appreciate the intel.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. Good
so
discussion.
I think our next podcast is going to be on Explore. Is that right? So that's coming up next here, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time.
See ya.